It was midnight when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and there stood my daughter, still in her wedding dress, her makeup smeared with blood. She looked at me with terrified eyes and whispered, "Mom." He tried to bury me alive. My hands shook as I grabbed the phone and called someone I swore I never would. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know your story too. My name is Margaret Lane, though most people call me Maggie. I'm 69 years old, a widow, and I live alone in a small house on the edge of town. My life has been quiet for many years, filled with gardening, reading, and the occasional visit from my daughter, Isabella, though we all call her Izzy. She's 28 now, strong-willed and beautiful, though she has always longed to build a life separate from me. Izzy and I have had our share of ups and downs. After her father, Richard, and I divorced years ago, things were messy. Richard was strict, controlling, and cold. I left him to protect myself and my daughter, and I swore I would never rely on him again. For years, I raised Izzy on my own. She grew into a woman who wanted independence, who wanted to choose her own path, even when I worried about where that path might lead. When Izzy told me she was getting married, I tried to be happy for her. Her fiancé, Daniel, seemed polished, successful, and charming in front of others. But there was something in his eyes I didn't trust. He was too smooth, too practiced. I kept my concerns to myself, though. Izzy was in love, and like any mother, I didn't want to push her away by criticizing her choices. On the night of her wedding, I sat alone at home. I hadn't been invited to every part of the celebration, but I told myself it was fine. I wanted Izzy to have her day without me overshadowing it with my doubts. I made tea, looked at old photo albums, and whispered a prayer that her new life would be kinder than mine had been. But as the hours stretched past midnight, unease grew in my chest. Weddings should end with laughter and joy, but the silence felt heavy. Then came the knock on my door, sharp and desperate. My heart pounded as I opened it and saw my daughter standing there, her wedding dress torn, her hands dirty, streaks of blood mixed with smeared makeup on her face. She swayed on her feet, her lips trembling, her words cut into me like a knife. "Mom?" He tried to bury me alive. For a moment I couldn't move. My daughter stood in front of me, trembling, her gown filthy and torn, streaks of mud clinging to the hem. Blood smeared her cheek where her makeup had run, her mascara streaked down in dark lines. She looked like she had clawed her way out of the earth itself. My hands shook as I pulled her inside and shut the door behind us. "Sit down, Izzy. Sit down," I whispered, guiding her to the couch. She collapsed against me, her whole body shaking. I tried to steady her, brushing her hair back from her face. "Tell me what happened." Her breathing was uneven, and for a while she couldn't speak. Then, with her voice cracking, she said the words that chilled me to the bone. "He tried to kill me, Mom. Daniel tried to bury me alive." I felt the air leave my lungs. My daughter's wedding night, the night she was supposed to step into a new life, had turned into something out of a nightmare. I wanted to believe I had misheard her, but the terror in her eyes told me she was telling the truth. She gripped my arm so tightly her nails dug into my skin. After the reception, he said he wanted to talk privately. He led me outside, near the edge of the woods behind the venue. At first, I thought it was just for air. Then his face changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. He grabbed me, pushed me down, and said I belonged to him forever. Her words poured out in a rush now, her voice trembling. He had a shovel. There was already a hole in the ground, like he planned it. He pushed me toward it and said no one would ever find me. I fought him, Mom. I fought with everything I had. He shoved me down, The dirt got in my mouth and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. I held her tighter, my own tears burning behind my eyes. My heart pounded as if I was the one suffocating. "How did you get away?" I asked softly. She swallowed hard. "I clawed at the dirt. My nails broke. I managed to get out when he turned away for a second, yelling at something in the woods. I just ran, Mom. I didn't stop. I ran until I saw the road, and someone gave me a ride back toward town. I told them I was fine. I couldn't explain. I was too afraid he would find me." I brushed her hair from her face again, rocking her gently, like she was still a little girl. Every instinct in me screamed to call the police right that second. But fear stopped me. Daniel wasn't just a man. He was powerful. His family had money, influence, and friends in places where truth could be twisted. What if they turned this on Izzy? What if they said she was hysterical? Or worse, lying? Izzy grabbed my hands. "Please, Mom, don't call anyone yet. I don't trust them. He knows people. He'll find a way to make it go away. I need you. Just you." Her plea tore me in half. My daughter was terrified, begging me for protection. But how could I protect her against someone like Daniel without help? My mind raced. The phone on the table seemed to glow, daring me to pick it up. But my hands froze. I tried to steady myself. "You're safe here," I told her firmly. "He's not getting near you again." She leaned against me, her body heavy with exhaustion. I could feel her heartbeat racing as fast as mine. I rubbed her back the way I used to when she had fevers as a child. Inside, though, my fear was rising. The more I thought about Daniel, the more I realized this wasn't just a moment of madness. This was planned. The shovel, the hole. It meant he had thought about this before. I imagined his face, calm and polished at the wedding, smiling for pictures, shaking hands. No one would have guessed the darkness he carried. My stomach turned. I had doubted him, but I never dreamed it was this bad. Izzy's voice broke through my thoughts. "Mom, what do we do now?" Her question hung in the room like a heavy weight. What did we do? I couldn't let her go back to him. I couldn't let him get away with this. But every option felt dangerous. The police might not believe her, and even if they did, Daniel would find a way to twist things. I knew men like him. I had lived with one before. That was when another thought crept into my mind. One I had pushed away for years. Richard, my ex-husband, Izzy's father, a man I had sworn never to depend on again. He was cruel, he was controlling, and he had broken me in ways I thought I'd never recover from. But he was also powerful. He had connections, influence, and a ruthless determination that once frightened me, but could now be the very thing that saved our daughter. I shook the thought away at first. I had promised myself I would never call him again. Never. But as I looked down at Izzy, clutching my arm with dirt still under her fingernails, I realized I might not have a choice. I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "I'll protect you, whatever it takes." And deep inside, I knew the moment was coming when I would have to pick up that phone and dial the one number I thought I'd erased from my life forever. I sat frozen on the couch long after Izzy had fallen asleep, her head heavy on my lap, her breath uneven from crying. My living room was dimly lit, only the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across the walls. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the steady tick of the old clock above the mantel. My mind raced, but my hands wouldn't move. I felt as if I had been transported back in time, back to nights when I was younger, afraid in my own home, waiting for Richard's footsteps on the stairs. I thought about the vows I made to myself the day I walked out of that house decades ago. I had promised I would never again let Richard control me. I promised I would never ask him for anything. But now my daughter, our daughter, was lying on my couch after escaping death at the hands of her new husband. and all I could think was that Richard was the only one who could help us. The idea made my stomach turn. I hated myself for even considering it. Richard was not a good man. He had belittled me, broken me down piece by piece, and left scars on my heart that no one could see. But I also knew his power. Richard had money, connections, and a way of handling threats that went beyond the law. He was the kind of man who could destroy someone like Daniel in a way the police never could. I reached for my phone and stared at it. My fingers hovered above the screen, trembling. The weight of the decision pressed on me like a stone. I whispered to myself, "No, Maggie, don't do it. You swore you'd never go back to him." But then I looked at Izzy again. Her wedding dress was still ripped. Streaks of dirt ground into the fabric, her hands raw and red from clawing at the earth. She had trusted me enough to run here, to collapse into my arms, to believe I could keep her safe. If I failed her now, what kind of mother would I be? The thought of Daniel walking free, smiling as if nothing happened, made bile rise in my throat. I imagined him knocking at my door, demanding Izzy return to him, backed by his powerful family and his polished lies. I knew I couldn't fight him alone. I didn't have the strength or the influence. I pressed the phone to my chest and whispered, "God, give me courage." Finally, I scrolled through my contacts. Richard's number was still there, buried deep, one I had never dared delete. My finger hovered over the call button, and my hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I thought of the sound of his voice, sharp and cold, the voice I had run from. My heart pounded like I was about to face him all over again. But then I remembered something Izzy had said when she first stumbled through the door. Her words rang in my ears. "Please, Mom, I need you." That was all I needed. It wasn't about my pride anymore, or my promises to myself. It was about protecting my daughter at any cost. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears with the back of my hand, and pressed the button. The line rang once, twice. My stomach twisted. And then his voice came through, rough and older, but still sharp enough to cut through me. "Maggie, after all these years." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Richard, it's Izzy. She's in trouble." There was a pause, the kind of pause that felt endless. Then his voice grew colder. "What kind of trouble?" The words nearly broke me. Saying them out loud made the nightmare feel real. Daniel tried to kill her. He tried to bury her alive. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to keep going. "She's here with me now. I don't know what to do. I wouldn't be calling you if I had any other choice." For the first time, Richard was silent. No sighs of irritation, no sharp words, just silence. And then, in a low voice, he said, "Where are you?" "In my house," I whispered. "I'll be there," he replied. "Don't let her out of your sight." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand trembling. A chill ran through me, part fear, part relief. I had done the very thing I swore I never would. I had reached out to the man I once hated most in this world. I looked down at Izzy, still sleeping fitfully on the couch, her hand clutching mine even in her dreams. My heart ached, but I whispered into the silence, "For you, my darling girl, for you, I'll walk through hell again." And as the clock ticked toward dawn, I sat there, waiting for Richard to arrive, knowing that when he did, nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The night dragged like a weight on my chest as I waited. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every sound outside made me think Daniel had found us. Izzy stirred on the couch now and then, mumbling in her sleep, her hands twitching as if she were still fighting her way out of the dirt. I stayed by her side, stroking her hair, whispering that she was safe. But inside, I wasn't sure if safety even existed anymore. Then came the sound of a car pulling up outside. My breath caught in my throat. I rose slowly, my legs heavy with dread. I peeked out through the curtains, and the headlights cut across the dark street. The engine went silent. A tall figure stepped out, his posture unmistakable even after all these years. Richard. I hadn't seen him in decades, but in an instant, all the old memories came flooding back. The sharpness in his eyes, the way he used to command every room he entered. Time had aged him. His hair was grayer, his shoulders stooped slightly, but the same cold power radiated from him. When I opened the door, we stood face to face, two ghosts from a life long gone. "Maggie," he said simply, his voice lower but still cutting through me. "Richard," I replied, my hand tightening on the doorknob. "She's inside." His eyes flickered past me, and when he saw Izzy asleep on the couch, his expression shifted. For a brief moment, the man I once loved showed on his face, the father who hadn't seen his daughter broken like this. He stepped inside without asking permission, his gaze fixed on her. "She told me everything," I whispered, my voice breaking. "He tried to kill her." Richard's jaw tightened. He walked closer to Izzy, knelt beside her, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. "She looks like you did once," he murmured, "fighting to survive." The words cut into me. I wanted to scream at him, remind him of what he had put me through, but this wasn't the time. I swallowed my anger. "Richard, she's terrified. She doesn't want the police. Daniel has power. He'll twist the story. He'll destroy her reputation. We need to end this differently." Richard stood and looked at me. His eyes hardened into steel. "Then we deal with him." Before I could ask what he meant, a loud banging rattled the door. My blood turned cold. A voice rang out, too smooth, too calm. "Maggie, open the door. Where's Izzy? She belongs with me." It was Daniel. Izzy jolted awake, her face draining of color. She scrambled to her feet, clutching my arm. "Mom, it's him!" she cried, her voice shaking. Richard motioned for silence. He straightened his shoulders, his old presence returning like armor. He walked to the door and yanked it open. Daniel stood there in the night, his tuxedo disheveled, his tie loose, his hair wild, but his smile was chilling. "Mr. Lane," he said smoothly, "what a surprise. I didn't know you were still in the picture." Richard's voice was low but dangerous. "You put your hands on my daughter." Daniel chuckled darkly. "She's my wife now. She belongs to me. Whatever she told you, she's confused, emotional. You know how women can be." Izzy gasped, but Richard's hand shot up to steady her. His gaze never left Daniel. "Save your lies." "I know what you did." Daniel's smile faltered for the first time. "You have no proof." That was when Richard pulled something from his coat pocket. His phone. He pressed play, and Daniel's voice filled the air, dripping with arrogance. "A recording, clear as day. No one will find you out here. If you ever try to leave me, I'll put you in the ground for good." My knees nearly buckled. Izzy's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. She looked at me, whispering, "He recorded him?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "I make it my business to know who my daughter is marrying. I warned you, Daniel. I warned you to stay in line. You didn't listen." Daniel's mask shattered. His smile twisted into rage. He lunged forward, but Richard was faster, shoving him back out onto the porch. The commotion drew neighbors from their windows, lights flicking on all down the street. Richard raised his voice for the first time, booming like thunder. "This man tried to kill my daughter. Call the police." Daniel struggled, cursing, but it was over. By the time the flashing red and blue lights filled the street, his fury had turned into desperation. He shouted that Izzy was unstable, that it was all lies. But the recording was undeniable. Izzy's bruises undeniable. The dirt under her nails undeniable. The officers took him away in handcuffs as he shouted threats into the night. Izzy collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "It's over, Mom. It's finally over." I held her close. but my eyes met Richard's over her shoulder. For a moment, no words passed between us, but in his face, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not pride, just a father's grief at nearly losing the only thing that mattered. And in that silence, I knew everything had changed. The night Daniel was taken away, the house finally grew quiet again, but it was the kind of silence that rang in your ears. The flashing lights of the police cars faded down the street, and I shut the door with shaking hands. My knees gave out beneath me, and I sank to the floor, holding Izzy as she sobbed into my shoulder. For the first time since she had stumbled through my door in that wedding dress, I let myself cry too. Not just out of fear, but out of relief. Relief that she was alive. Relief that Daniel's mask had cracked for everyone to see. Izzy clung to me, her voice breaking. "Mom, I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never see you again." I kissed her hair, rocking her gently like when she was a little girl. "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're home. No one will ever hurt you like that again." But even as I whispered those words, my eyes drifted to Richard, who stood by the window, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. He had been the man I swore never to lean on again, the man who once left me broken. And yet, tonight, he had been the shield between Daniel and our daughter. When Izzy finally fell asleep in my bed, exhausted beyond words, I walked into the kitchen and found Richard pouring himself a glass of water. The lines on his face seemed deeper than I remembered, his eyes tired but burning with something I hadn't seen before. "Regret. Thank you," I said quietly. The words tasted strange on my tongue, but they were true. He set the glass down and met my gaze. "You shouldn't have needed me. I should have been here all along." I shook my head. "We can't rewrite the past, Richard. What you did back then, it doesn't vanish. But tonight, you did the right thing. And for Izzy, that means everything." For a long moment, we stood in silence. The years of anger and hurt hung between us. But underneath it was something else. The recognition that we were bound forever, not by love anymore, but by the daughter we shared. The days that followed were a blur of police reports, lawyers, and endless questions. Daniel's influence made the process difficult, but the recording Richard had captured, combined with Izzy's testimony, made the truth undeniable. Neighbors who had once admired Daniel's charm now looked at him with disgust. For the first time, Izzy's voice carried weight, and she was believed. Watching her face the authorities with trembling courage filled me with pride. At home, healing began slowly. Izzy stayed with me, her once bright eyes shadowed with nightmares. Sometimes I would hear her crying in her sleep, whispering, "Don't put me in the ground." I would rush to her side, hold her hand, and remind her she was safe. Trauma leaves scars that take time to fade, but she was strong, stronger than she knew. Richard came by a few more times in those weeks. He didn't try to control or demand the way he once would have. He kept his distance, watching Izzy carefully, quietly offering what help he could. And though I didn't forgive him for the past, I realized something important. People are complicated. Sometimes the same man who hurt you can also save you. And sometimes the choices we swore we'd never make become the ones that protect the people we love most. One evening, as Izzy and I sat together on the porch, she held my hand and whispered, "Mom, if you hadn't believed me, if you hadn't protected me, I wouldn't be here." Tears stung my eyes. "You ran to me, Izzy. You knew I'd fight for you, no matter what. That's what mothers do." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. Looking back now, I realized the greatest lesson of that night was not just about survival. It was about the bond between a mother and her child, a bond that can withstand fear, betrayal, and even death itself. It was about how love pushes us to make choices we never thought we could, even if it means facing the darkest parts of our past. I never wanted to call Richard again, but if I hadn't, Daniel might still be walking free. Sometimes, protecting the people we love means swallowing our pride, facing the ghosts of our history, and choosing the path we swore we'd never take. And in doing so, we not only save them, we save ourselves. Now, when I look at Izzy, I don't just see my daughter. I see a survivor, and I see myself reflected in her strength. She is living proof that even when evil tries to bury you, love can pull you back into the light. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories too.